Hey everyone, John here with How to Film Weddings, and today I'll be talking about how I lost $10,000 when a bride canceled her wedding on me. It was rough. All right, so today we have back with us Paige Hulse, a quick introduction of who she is, and then we'll get into a subject today of how I lost out on about 10 grand when a bride canceled on me. But first, who are you? What do you do? All that good stuff.
All right, yeah, thanks, John. My name is Paige Hulse, and I am an attorney for creative entrepreneurs and small business owners. I have two businesses, and that is Paige Hulse Law. Got really creative with that name. Second one is the Creative Law Shop, and that is where I sell contract templates for creative entrepreneurs.
Super helpful website. Link below to that website. Awesome stuff, templates that will really help you out for your wedding video business, not for your wedding. Anyway, so this actually happened to me about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. 30 days before a wedding, they had booked us for video and for photo. And 30 days before the wedding, the bride finds out that things have been happening behind her back. She cancels her wedding and asks for her money back to the tune of around $10,000. And so they had already paid us most of that. And the bride said, "We're not doing the wedding, we want to cancel." I looked in my contract frantically, like, oh my goodness, what do I do? And the only thing I had in my contract was a 33% non-refundable retainer. Nothing about cancellations, refunds, anything like that, and I realized I was in big trouble. And very long story short, we fought back and forth. They filed a claim against their credit card, and the credit card company, put a strike on my account and deducted 10 grand out of my account. So one day I woke up and there was just $10,000 less in my account, which really sucks bad. So I just wanted to talk to you today just about cancellations. We don't want them to happen, but they are inevitable in a wedding videographer's business. What we can do to kind of make sure that we're protected in the case that it does happen. What should we be saying? All the things from an attorney's perspective on cancellation. So I want to kind of give you the floor to kind of just give your rundown on what we should be thinking about. Enlighten us.
Well, first, hopefully we can all learn from your story. It's good for that at least. The bad news is that story is not uncommon at all. And I didn't even tell you this. I had a client that I just wrapped up a court case for who had this exact same issue happen. Anyways, it's common is my point. Yeah, very. The good news is you can learn from John's story and avoid that result with the addition of just one paragraph in your contract. And that paragraph is going to be your cancellation policy. That cancellation policy should list things like how much notice is required, how they should give the notice. So what I mean when I say notice is in your contract, you should have a notice provision that lists your how you want to be contacted. So your email address and a written address and maybe a phone number, but if you're requiring written notice, we're really just talking about email here. So I usually tell my clients to require 30 days notice. So they have to tell you, they can't just text you and say, "Hey, I want to cancel my wedding tomorrow." They have to send you an email. We'll get to that in a minute. The second thing that I'm going to look for in that cancellation provision is a specified schedule of payments and how much money they can get back, what's refundable, what's not. In all of the contracts I write, I say that all money is non-refundable, meaning every payment that they make, there's nothing that can cause them to get that money back. So if you have them on a payment schedule that is equitable, which would be something that's something like a 25 or 33% non-refundable retainer or deposit, and then 3 or 4 payments after that. If they've paid those payments, they can't get that money back. And I know what you're thinking is, okay, well, I've had the nightmare client who, even though I had that in my contract, they still claim that they would file something against their credit card company, and I might be like John and wake up the next day with $10,000 gone from my bank account. If that happens, then the first thing that you would do is contact that credit card company and send them a copy of that contract. That contract is going to go so far in rectifying that situation if it's to occur. So this cancellation provision that I'm talking about, again, maybe has to be 4 or 5 sentences long, but it just needs to state what notice is required, when it's required, and what money is refundable or not refundable. So just because this is a point that we really want to drive home with your clients, I would tell you to put it in your fee paragraph, payment paragraph, whatever you want to call it, whatever section of the contract, which it should be in there, with your schedule of payments. I always have, usually in bold or italics or something right next to it, payments are due these dates and all payments are non-refundable. So the second thing that kind of comes to mind with your example in particular, or if you get contacted by probably a bride or a groom saying they want to cancel the contract, you can't force them obviously to still have the wedding. Like, you have to let them off the hook on some level.
You have to get married. You have to.
You can't actually force this thing to happen. You can require that they don't pay you back any of the money, or that you don't pay them back any of the money they've paid you. But you can't force them to strict performance, meaning to have the wedding itself. So if they want to cancel the wedding, I advise all of my clients to take an extra step and have them sign a cancellation agreement, which is going to just state that on this date, the parties decided to cancel the agreement. All payments made are not going to be refunded, and the party or the client expressly releases the vendor or the videographer, or John, of all future claims and liabilities and blah, blah, blah.
And I currently don't have that, so that would be super cool to have like some type of paragraph written, just to have, in my arsenal. If somebody does cancel, we understand, we're going to email you this, please sign it to officially cancel the day.
Exactly.
And that would, a year later down the road, they don't, you just keep that in their file forever.
Yeah, and you need to void that contract. And my job is, I feel like every day I'm surprised by people, which maybe that's not a good thing to say on camera, but you never know what people are going to do. So you might have that bride who 2 months before the wedding decides that they want to cancel the wedding because she and the groom have had a horrible fight or something, and you say, okay, we'll part ways amicably, all payments are non-refundable, blah, blah, blah. The groom and the bride might make up and decide to go on with the wedding, and she might contact you a month later and be like, hey, John, great news, the wedding's still on. You might have already booked that date for somebody else, and if you don't have a cancellation agreement, then either way, it's going to be, you're going to have to pay a lawyer to help you tell them that one or both of the contracts are void.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that, for me, I'm always, after things like this happen to you, you're like, okay, how can I prevent this from happening again? And it might seem a little bit ridiculous, but as soon as it happens to you, if it hasn't happened to you yet, most likely somebody's going to cancel on you. And I've had lots of people cancel. I've been doing this 11 years and I've probably had about 11 people cancel. Some just, we understand. We've had people cancel and they've paid all their payments. They got it. They just didn't get, it's like, sorry. And I try, and I don't know if this is something that I should do or shouldn't do, but sometimes people have canceled and I say, well, if you do, decide to get married, please let me know. I would honor a credit. If I wanted to do something like that, would that be something that's maybe in my cancellation policy?
Definitely.
Or
yeah, so that's actually something that's in my templates in my shop too, just because when I draft those, I try to draft them as overly inclusive as possible for whatever scenarios come up. And so that's a line I have in there where, at your option, you being the videographer, if you want to say all of these payments that you've paid are non-refundable, but I'll honor them for a future date, that's totally something that you can do. Definitely not something that's required by any means, but it may help you get a little bit more business down the road too. And it might be kind of seen as an act of goodwill.
Yeah, I had a bride this last year who was supposed to get married in October. They decided to cancel it, and I said, well, they weren't mad, they just were like, we're feeling rushed, so we're going to cancel it. And I had turned down other dates or brides for that date, and I was like, they were really sweet people, and they felt like they really needed to just push pause and wait.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, if you guys do decide to get married in the next year, I can apply your deposit. Even though my contract states this, I need you to agree in writing that you're okay with this.
Right.
and they ended up going and eloping in March.
Okay.
And so they applied their retainer and booked a package that was several $1,000s more than the October one. So it worked out in my favor.
Yeah.
But I can imagine having like the cancellation agreement just would be that extra layer of protection.
Exactly.
So if I were a wedding videographer out there and all this stuff I'm hearing and it's like, holy moly, I need this stuff. Where do they go to find it? Do you have these things? Will you have these things? I know that you're building templates as needed.
Yeah.
So like if they download one of your contract templates for videographers and photographers, will this kind of thing kind of be in there? Or how do they make sure to get this into their...
So every template I have definitely has a cancellation policy or a no-show policy. I mean, all of that language is in there. You can also go to the shop and find a cancellation agreement, which would be a separate document. And that's just a standalone separate document that, again, isn't complicated, but becomes very necessary.
Yeah, and I wouldn't feel comfortable just writing it myself, being like, if you cancel, I won't even know it. It is, but I would just still feel like somebody that is smarter than me would like loop themselves around and get out of that. And the thing is we want to, like when we've talked before, yes, we want to protect us, but we also want to protect the client that we're working with. The goal is to say, hey, this contract is to protect you more so than even me, And that in itself, for me, I felt more confident moving with my brides, that I know that if they do cancel or if, when they're signing with me, that this is actually legally correct.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm obviously biased, but that the contract is the most basic. It's literally my mentor who taught me how to write contracts said every contract is just a seatbelt. It's just something that you put on the minute you get in the car without thinking about it, and you don't really think about it until all of a sudden it saves your life and you need to think about it. So that's the most basic thing that any business owner can do to protect themselves and do it right, because it's important.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for coming on. Please don't be like me and get yourself in a bind where you lose so much money in one transaction. I mean, it can put some people out of business. So make sure you're protected. Thank you again for coming on today, and we'll see you guys in the next video.